What's going on YouTube? It's your boy Cody with Off the Schneid coming back for another UFC preview, breakdown, prediction, betting tips, everything you need to know to get you prepared for this Saturday for UFC on ESPN 9, Woodley versus Burns. Super excited. If it's your first time at the channel, do me a massive favor. Hit me with the 3-piece and the soda. Give me that like, subscribe, turn on notifications to let you know when I'm pumping out some content. It's been a couple weeks since we had any UFC cards. We had 3 in a week, which was pretty cool. Haven't had anything since. Personally, I'm plus money still, which is all you can really ask for, but hopefully we'll get that back in this card on Saturday. So without further ado, let's get to it. Break down the entire card for Woodley versus Burns. All right, we're going to start it off in the featherweight division, which is interesting. Both of these guys usually fight at bantamweight, but obviously we've seen this a few times during this pandemic. Guys can't quite cut the weight properly and live a normal life and everything like that, so they just agree to fight a weight class above. It's fine. There shouldn't be a huge advantage here for either guy. Height and reach is relatively similar, so I don't see a huge advantage given the difference in weight class here. But we'll break it down, and we'll start with Chris El Guapo Gutierrez. So he's definitely a stand-up fighter, very comfortable on his feet. He moves well, fights out of Factory X, which is a very good gym right now, orthodox fighter. In his last 3 fights, he's 2-1 so far in the UFC. Geraldo de Freitas, split decision win. Ryan McDonald, unanimous decision win. And then he got rear naked choked in the second round from Joanny Barcelos in his debut. Former LFA fighter. Barcelos beat Khabib's cousin in his last time out, so pretty good fighter there. He's undefeated 4-0 in the UFC so far, so that's not really a terrible loss. He just looked he definitely was overmatched on the ground, that's for sure, and it showed. But he had him cut, he had him hurt, and definitely kind of held his own in that fight. The Geraldo de Freitas, you could definitely say that he lost that fight. I mean, it was razor close, and I mean, it could have gone either way, but you could definitely say that he lost that fight, which definitely is a little bit interesting considering once we get to Morales here. So like I said, he's very good on his feet. He throws a ton of leg kicks. So he's just gonna, what he likes to do is kind of chop his opponent down, start low, work high, Justin Gaethje style, you know, start at the legs, chop him down, and then it slows him down throughout the fight. I think he lost all of his first rounds. It was pretty close that he lost all of his first rounds in his 3 UFC fights. So I think he's okay with that. He just chops down the legs, and it pays dividends later in the fight, which is going to be a big, it's going to be a key to this fight, in my opinion. So that's Gutierrez. 14-4 is his record right now. Like I said, 2-1 in the UFC, former LFA standout. So that's Gutierrez. We'll move over to Vendetta Vince Morales, who I quite like. If you're looking at the body of work, and we just start there, Morales definitely has fought the tougher opponents. Benito Lopez is a very, very, very good fighter, and here's where it gets a little interesting. I thought they actually won that Benito Lopez fight. So Morales takes a loss in his last fight, but I think he won it. Gutierrez takes the W in his last fight, but I think he lost that fight. So it's really interesting, and the quality of opponent is a fair bit different. Took a unanimous decision win against Firas Zahabi's little brother, and then lost to Yadong Song, which is, I mean, we all saw Yadong Song not too long ago, and there's nothing wrong with that loss at all. So he is sitting at 1-2 in the UFC, and he lost on the Contender Series. But had that guy rocked a few times, cut open, bleeding. Domingo Pilarte is who it was. But it's similar to Gutierrez. Morales is not that great on the ground, kind of looked like a fish out of water and got choked out relatively quickly. So I do not expect this fight to go to the ground at all. I really, really do not see it going to the ground. There's a little bit of a reach advantage for Morales, which I think might make a difference because he's got a different body type. He's a little longer legs and everything like that, longer arms. So I think that reach advantage will exist. He throws a pretty good jab, so that'll definitely help. They're both orthodox, pretty good at switching stances. He's got a good chin. That's definitely a thing for Morales. He ate some shots against Pilarte as well as Benito Lopez. He's got pretty good boxing. He's got a really good gas tank. He doesn't really, as far as I saw, I didn't see him breathing hard really once, which was definitely, he was in some tough fights, so that's pretty encouraging. And this kid has absolutely zero quit in him. He got literally choked unconscious by Pilarte. He did not tap. He was trying to get out, trying to do some scrambles, spinning, kind of like look like a crocodile out of water. They're just doing a death roll, trying to get out of this choke. Obviously, Pilarte had it locked up, and he went to sleep. So he's not going to tap out. There's no quit in this kid. But here's where it's going to get interesting. Is Gutierrez, I think, is going to chop down on those legs, and Morales ate a lot of leg kicks against Benito Lopez. So they could play some serious dividends and play a serious factor and have a big role in this fight. It's a complete pick'em, obviously, if you're looking at the odds now. We'll start with, I guess, who I'm picking. Who am I picking in this fight? I'm going to go with Vince Morales. I think this is going to be a stand-up battle. I think he's got a little more power. Just his quality of opponents in his last few fights is a little bit stronger than Gutierrez, as well as the fact that I thought he actually got the W against Benito Lopez, which was a 100% stand-up battle. And then Gutierrez, I thought, took the loss against Freitas. So I think that is a kind of a big factor. I think that's, if those fights went the other way, then this fight would look a lot differently, in my opinion, for sure, in the odds. So I'm taking Morales, and if you're looking at the odds, complete pick'em. There's a few on this card that are just like this, where the odds are completely a pick'em, including the finish and the decision odds, which is surprising. That's pretty rare that happens. Usually one guy has more power or, finishability or something like that. But there's a few on this card that they're straight pick'ems, which is kind of interesting. So I don't mind the 1.9 for Morales. I don't really mind that at all. I'm not sure if either of these guys finish each other. I really don't see it. They both got pretty good chins. They've both been to nothing but decisions in their UFC career. So I'm not taking a swing on the 5.5 to 1 for a stoppage. I'm just going to avoid that. And then decision, I think I like those odds, 2.62. I definitely like those odds. But again, it's a coin flip, so it's a matter of who you think can get the W. I might take Morales in the decision. I mean, that's a decent little jump in numbers there and pay for a Morales decision, because Gutierrez is tough, man. He's tough unless he catches him. But Morales he rocked Lopez, and he rocked Pilarte pretty badly. So. And Song Yudong just moves way too well to get hit like that. So I think Morales in the decision is a solid pick. Fight to go the distance. Not getting great odds there. I probably just take a coin flip on the decision on one of the fighters, and I think I'm going with Morales, so I avoid that. Over under in the round betting, I avoid that too. I'm either looking for Morales in the money line or Morales in the decision. Those are my two kind of picks, and that's who I'm picking in the fight as well. So there you go. Let's move on to the next fight. The next two fights are kind of interesting. Kenney fought Brandon Royval, and Luis Smolka fought Tim Elliott. So it's kind of interesting that they're just kind of swapping opponents at different weight classes too, which is interesting. So this fight is going to take down at 135 at bantamweight, and Smolka's fought at 125. So he's got a weird, super wiry, lanky frame at 5'9" to make 125. That's pretty crazy. But we'll start out with Kenney. Fights out of the MMA Lab, which is a very good gym right now. He's 5'7". He's got a 68-inch reach, southpaw. Got really clean boxing with good power. He's the former LFA flyweight champ. He's a very strong guy with good wrestling. He's really well-rounded, as a lot of fighters, I shouldn't say guys, but a lot of fighters out of MMA Lab. They're all very well-rounded, and they work kind of every aspect. He's definitely a bit of a grinder. In his last fight against Merab Dvalishvili, he kind of just got out-grinded. It was a pretty fun fight. One judge had it like 30-25 or some nonsense like that, which was crazy. I mean, Kenney didn't win the fight, but he didn't get dominated like that. That was pretty crazy. So Kenney took a loss in his last fight, but then he's kind of had a bit of a tough road. He had Ray Borg in his debut, who was a former title challenger, and then Manny Bermudez, who, you know, I thought was going to be a title challenger at some point. I was obviously completely wrong about Manny Bermudez. Yeah, he kind of broke my heart. That I guess I shouldn't have started talking him up, because as soon as I started talking him up, he fell off a cliff. But yeah, Casey Kenney, very strong, well-rounded fighter, 1-2 in his UFC career so far, and then fights at a good gym. So let's take a look at Louis De Last Samurai Smolka, who I really like. He's in a second stint in the UFC. He won 4 straight back in 2015 and 16, 14-16. He was a headline to show. You know, he was having a really promising career in the UFC. Took 1 loss, then he was 5-1 in the UFC back in 14-16. Then he lost 4 straight, including, like I said, to Tim Elliott, Brandon Moreno, Ray Borg, Tim Elliott. Those aren't crazy, horrible losses. Moreno, I think, should be fighting for the title. He'll fight. In my opinion, he fights the winner of Figueiredo and Benavidez. So we'll see what happens there. But either way, then he rounds off 4 straight losses, which really hurt, obviously. Then he goes down to the minors and beats up a bunch of guys, all stoppages, and punches his ticket back in the UFC. Armbar win, takes a loss to Matt Schnell, who's very good as well. Very, very good fighter, Matt Schnell. And then beat Ryan McDonald pretty quickly in the first round. Luis Smolka is really, really fun to watch. He's got crazy good scrambles. He's very good off his back, very good submissions. Solid boxing, super long, like I said, super long, 5'9". It says there's no reach advantage, but there's gonna be a bit. There's gonna be a little bit of a reach advantage for Smolka. He's just super long and lanky. Puts his punches together really well. But the big problem I have with Smolka, especially in this fight against Kenney, is that he's very easy to take down. He's good with jiu-jitsu, and he's good off his back, so he doesn't really mind being taken down, but then he gets grinded out for decision losses. I mean, it's happened more than once in his career, and that's kind of just how it works for Smolka. So it's an interesting game that some of these guys play, is they just allow themselves to be taken down because they're comfortable, but you're not going to win fights off your back a lot of times unless you're tapping guys out, which is difficult to do. At this level, with how skilled these guys are, it's not that easy to just, throw up a triangle and tap guys out, especially a guy like Kenney. Like, I just don't see that happening. So who am I going to pick in this fight? I'm picking Casey Kenney. I think that fight with Merab was at high altitude, which is really tough, and Merab is just a freak with his cardio, so it's tough to keep up with a guy like that, especially a grinder who just outgrinds you. And if Kenny's a grinder and he's getting outgrinded by Merab, there's no shame in that, really. Like, there's really no shame in that. Fights out of Serra Longo, which is a great gym. So there's no harm in that loss to Merab Dvalishvili. And that's kind of how I see this going. I just think Casey Kenney takes him down, grinds him out, pounds him out, and most likely wins a decision. And the odds makers looks like they kind of agree with me here. So this is a tough one to bet on. I'm picking Casey Kenney to win. And then this is kind of a tough one to bet on. I mean, you could just take the 1.36, throw it in a parlay, and Bob's your uncle. 4.33 for a finish. I'm not sure I see that happening unless it's some kind of submission that Kenney catches him in, which I highly doubt. Smolka's never been knocked out. He's lost twice due to via submission, and I don't really see Kenney having better Brazilian jiu-jitsu than Smolka. I don't see that happening, and I don't see him unless he rocks him and then falls him to the ground and sinks a choke in somehow. That could happen, but I'm not taking those odds. I don't think he finishes him. And then for the 1.83 in the decision, I mean, I guess, but it's really tough to take that risk. Yeah, it's tough to take that risk. And if I'm being honest, I might just go with 1.4 for a decision over the 1.36. It's nothing major, but I mean, it's possible Smolka grinds out a decision, or if it stays on the feet and he just outpoints him with his length and his boxing, that's possible. So I mean, I don't mind the 1.4 for a decision to throw in a parlay. I really don't mind that. The over-unders, unless you can find a finish somewhere, which I have a hard time finding a finish. I really do for either guy. So I'm probably avoiding that. I might just take 1.4 for the distance, 1.36 for Casey Kenney. It's hard to hedge that even. It's hard to hedge for Smolka. I mean, 5-1 on your money for a decision win is pretty sweet. 3.25 is pretty sweet, but it's hard. Honestly, it's just hard to find a win for Luis Smolka. It is. The quality of opponents in their last few fights is definitely on the side of Casey Kenney. So yeah, I mean, I'm picking Casey Kenney, and that's pretty much it. And the betting, I'm going with the money line or 1.4 to go the distance. Those are pretty much the only two things I'm touching. I might sprinkle maybe a 1.83 for Kenney in the decision, but other than that, and I'm probably avoiding Smolka, to be honest with you. But if you want to leave this out, there's no harm in that because you're not getting insane odds unless you're like me and you really think Casey Kenney wins this fight, which I do. I'm probably going 1.36 for Casey Kenney, and that's who I'm picking as well. All right, so like I said, Tim Elliott, former opponent of Luis Smolka, and Brandon Royval, former opponent of Casey Kenney back in the LFA days for the LFA flyweight title. So this takes place at 125. We'll start it out with Tim Elliott, former tough winner, won the Ultimate Fighter for the chance to fight DJ Mighty Mouse for the flyweight title back in the day. Unanimous decision loss, but he took him 5 rounds. He took Mighty Mouse 5 rounds, which is kind of an accomplishment in itself. So takes that loss, then beats Smolka in a decision, which was a really fun fight to watch if you like grappling scrambles. It was really, really cool, really fun. A lot of different positions. Really unpredictable fight. But then he takes a bad loss to Ben Nguyen. First round rear naked choke. It was he must have clipped him. I did watch the fight, and it just looked like he had a rough night. I don't know. I mean, I think it happened in Australia or New Zealand, and maybe it was just the distance thing. I don't know. He just looked off and got tapped out pretty quickly by Ben Nguyen. Comes out, secures an anaconda choke against Mark De La Rosa, which was a pretty good fight. Nothing wrong with that win. I mean, it was. This is kind of where Tim Elliott's career has kind of gone. It's get to the point. I mean, in his previous UFC tenure, he was very mediocre. He was 2-4. 2-4 in his previous. I mean, he did fight some pretty game opponents, but he can't beat the guys that are at that level. He's not at that level. I'm sorry. He's just not. So he loses to Ben Nguyen, which is a bad one. He definitely should have won that fight. Then fights Mark De La Rosa in his UFC debut, and gets second round anaconda choke. Sweet, you have to win that fight, which he did. Then he takes on a tough opponent, Davison Figueiredo. Didn't fight for almost 2 years. And then fights Davison Figueiredo, and first round guillotine, which was super slick. And Figueiredo is kind of the flyweight champ right now. Obviously, he missed weight and then beat Benavidez, and they're rematching obviously for the title. And hopefully they both make weight and we actually get a new champ here. But once he takes that step up, he kind of falters. Fights Askar Askarov, who is undefeated, and took Brandon Moreno to a draw in his UFC debut, which is crazy good, and he is a crazy good fighter. So there's no harm in that, but again, once he gets to that level, he has a hard time winning the fights. He just does. I'm sorry to say it, but that's kind of how it's gone for Tim Elliott. He's a very good grappler. He's a grinder in your face type of guy. So that's kind of how he tries to. He's very Merab Dvalishvili, you know. He just grinds you and tries to outgrind you. Stays in your face. He's got a weird like style where he doesn't. It's hard to even say if he's orthodox or southpaw. I mean, I'm not even sure what's his power side because he stands straight, switches stances, kind of throws kicks, and he's ducking around. He's got a really weird style, but he leaves himself open and he's very hittable. But he's always scrambling. He's always scrambling and going for the takedown and trying to grind you out type of thing. So that's Tim Elliott, ranked 11. We'll move to Brandon Royval, who is making his debut and is kind of getting thrown to the wolves a little bit, a lot like Mark De La Rosa. Like Tim Elliott, ranked number 11. That's not the funnest, you know, debut fight. But I mean, if Askarov's fighting Brandon Moreno and Mark De La Rosa's fighting Tim Elliott, like there's really nowhere else to go. I mean, there's not a ton of flyweight fighters on the roster. So, I mean, and if you want to move up quick, then there you go. So he's making his debut. He fought this past November in LFA, won the flyweight title after Casey Kenney moved on to the UFC. That Casey Kenney fight was really good, really fun fight. And then beats Joby Sanchez, who is a former UFC fighter, and then beats Nate Williams, who I believe also was in the UFC prior to that fight. No, he wasn't. But extremely experienced fighter, has 29 wins on his resume, and he goes out there and secures a super, super quick first round armbar. So that's kind of what he's all about. He's southpaw. He's definitely got some good reach. He'll definitely have a reach advantage. There's no quit in this kid either. Like I said, former flyweight champ in the LFA. He's got okay boxing. He's got good kicks. He's got really good submission defense. He could clean up that boxing a little bit. That would make me happy for sure if he cleaned up that boxing, considering his length. If you can be a solid, very, very good upper tier kind of boxer at that size in this weight class, man, he could do some serious damage. I mean, he's got a 4.5-inch reach on Tim Elliott, but that's going to look more like 6 with his length. So it is going to make a difference. So if he can pop out that jab and continue to put that jab in Tim Elliott's face, that's going to pay dividends for him, as well as like leg kicks and everything like that. I'm not sure how much he's going to want a leg kick because clearly Tim Elliott's going to want to try to take him down. However, if he gets him down there, Royval's got some slick jiu-jitsu, some super slick jiu-jitsu. Fights out of Factory X as well. Super, super slick jiu-jitsu with those arm bars. So I don't know, even if Tim does get it down to the ground, he has been submitted a few times. So this could be kind of how this fight goes. He's been submitted 4 times. So if he goes in if he shoots kind of lackadaisical a little bit on Royval, he could get tapped out pretty quickly. He's got a ton of arm bars on his resume, as well as triangle chokes. Yeah. So clearly he works well off his back is what I'm getting at here. He works very well off his back with his super slick jiu-jitsu. So if Tim Elliott goes in there and tries to just take him down and thinks he's going to scramble him and pound him out or something, it's not going to be that easy, man. It's really not. So well, there's kind of your breakdown. Brandon Raw Dog, I love the name. There's kind of your breakdown of who these guys are. So as far as who I'm picking, man, I'm going to go with Brandon Royval. I think he's the future of this division a little bit. I see a lot of Brandon Moreno in this kid. I see a lot of Brandon Moreno, who I really, really like. I really like Brandon Moreno. And like I said, he should be challenging for the title for the winner of Benavidez and Figueiredo. And that sets up a couple good fights here. I mean, if Royval can slide up quickly, there's a couple good fights at flyweight. So yeah, it's Askarov, you know, like there's some good fights out there. I think that might be a fight to make. If Royval can get by Tim Elliott, Askarov might be a good spot right there. But either way, so I'm picking Brandon Royval. I think he might be the future of this division. I think he can get by Tim Elliott. I think his route to victory, there's way more routes to victory, in my opinion, for Brandon Royval than there are for Tim Elliott. He's a gritty veteran, but just the way that he fights and what he does, it might play into what Brandon Royval wants to do. So I'm picking Brandon Royval, and looking at the odds, I'm getting some good money. If it's pretty rare that 125 that flyweights there's finishes. It doesn't happen an extreme amount. It just doesn't. But only one of his wins has been from decision for Royval. 5-1 on your money. I might take a shot at 4-1 for a finish. I wish it was a little higher. I would really like it if it were 5. If those two were flipped and the decision 5-1 was a stoppage money, I would like that more. Obviously, but 4-1, I might just take the 2.5. I mean, I'll definitely take that somewhere. I'll definitely take the 2.5 somewhere. I really like that. I think this is a solid spot to make some money. This is a fight that I think you can make some money. In my opinion, I think that this is a fight that you can do it. It's got great odds for who I think should get the win is Royval. So I'm definitely taking 2.5. I'm definitely taking 2.5 to 1 on the money line. I might sprinkle the finish, but that's tough to take. If it was higher, I would have no problem. 6-1, no problem. No question. I would be betting that. 5.5, 5 even. I would probably sprinkle, but 4, that's a lot of risk. It really is. And then it's basically a pick 'em to go to the distance, which is fair. I mean, that's a decent line by the odds makers for the pick 'em to go to a decision. That's a decent line. Over 1.5, 1.4. I definitely like that. I mean, if you got a bunch of runners or you just want a little more value somewhere, 1.4 on the over 1.5 at the 125 weight class, I like that. I definitely like that. It's almost easy. I mean, but like the fight to go to the distance there. I mean, it's very conceivable to say Tim Elliott shoots a lazy takedown and Royval just catches him in a guillotine. Very possible. So either way, I mean, I think the safest bet for me personally might be the 2.5 to 1 on the money line for Brandon Royval. So that's who I'm taking and that's who I'm picking. So let's move on to the next fight. Next up, we've got a light heavyweight clash between Jamal Sweet Dreams Hill and Klidson the White Bear Abreu. This should be interesting. We'll start it off with Abreu. I think personally that he's a little, I don't want to say undersized, but I think he with his body type, he should be able to cut down to 85. I think he carries a lot of not great weight, for lack of a better word. I think he could and maybe should cut down to 185 if he can. He's a BJJ world champion, but not a great wrestler, as you see a lot of times with good jiu-jitsu practitioners. He's got a win over Johnny Walker way back in, I think that probably happened in Brazil, but a win over Johnny Walker. He's 1-2 in the UFC. He's one of those guys. Like here's the thing about some of these Brazilian jiu-jitsu guys. They're Brazilian jiu-jitsu world champions, which means they're fantastic on the ground and they're fantastic on their back. So what they always, here's my problem with their mentality sometimes. Where they think, okay, I'm great on the ground. No one's going to want to take me down because they know I'm great on the ground. So I'm going to get good at stand-up. Here's my problem. Why don't you get good at wrestling? Why don't you become a fantastic wrestler and look to take guys down and then use your jiu-jitsu? Because these BJJ guys, they're not great, wrestlers. They're not really great at getting guys to the mat. They're fantastic if it gets there, but they're not great at taking it there. So that's my problem. You always see that, and it's Why don't you just get really good at wrestling and take the guy to where you are fantastic at, where you are very good and you have an advantage over most other fighters? Take it down, take it to the mat. Gilbert Burns, who we'll talk about later, he's getting better at wrestling, but he obviously covets the knockout more than he would taking a guy down and submitting him, which is kind of silly to me. And that's kind of what we see in Klidson Abreu. He's working on his stand-up, and he is improving. I saw a fair bit of improvement against Shamil Gamzatov, then against Sam Alvey, and definitely against Ankalaev, but yeah, it doesn't make sense to me, especially in this fight. If I'm Abreu, my game plan is to go out there, take down Jamal Hill, and submit him. That's my game plan. Is that what's going to happen? I highly doubt it. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. He's 1-2 in the UFC, all decisions. Magomed Ankalaev, decision victory for him, and then he gets the win against Sam Alvey, and then Shamil Gamzatov takes him to a split decision win. Could have went either way. I mean, yeah, he's getting better. Like I said, his boxing is getting better, but he's got pretty bad boxing, and he's got heavy hands. Don't get me wrong, but he's a big guy. Of course he does. But his boxing is super sloppy. Southpaw. This is a southpaw versus southpaw, which should be interesting. But I mean, and maybe he's improved. It's only been about 6 months since his last fight against Gamzatov, so maybe he's improved. But I couldn't see it improving to the level where he's going to be okay standing up with Jamal Hill. But we'll see. And I mean, like I said, if I'm Abreu, my route to victory is go in there, take down Jamal Hill, and try to submit him, or wrestle him, keep it on the floor. So we'll move to Jamal Hill, who is still super inexperienced. He's not 1-0, obviously, but he's only 7-0 in his career. And I don't know how his amateur career looked, but he's only 7-0. He's got a win against Daquan Townsend, who has been in the UFC. 0-3 he is in the UFC, but at least he's gotten there. That's the only guy on his resume that's gone to the UFC. And then he's a Contender Series guy. He had a great fight in the Contender Series. This guy's got some crazy knees, crazy good knees. He's got pretty decent boxing, a better gas tank than Abreu, and a super quick left leg. Great kicks. I'd love to see him throw more leg kicks. I'd really like to see that, especially with it's rare that you get southpaw versus southpaw, but I think there's actually a couple on this card, to be honest with you. But either way, I'd like to see him throw more leg kicks. He definitely throws really, really good knees. That's how we kind of finished Alexander Propek in the Contender Series. Just need him heavy, as well as Darko Stosic. He threw some huge knees against him as well. Ended up a unanimous decision win, which was he just picked him apart. Really, he just kind of picked him apart. Stayed on the outside. He was like, I don't know, 6 inches, maybe 8 inches taller than Darko, and way longer. As you can see, 79-inch reach. Just kind of picked him apart. So here's the breakdown of the fight. If Abreu decides to try to stand with Jamal Hill, there's no chance he wins this fight for me. So the route to victory for Abreu, take Hill down, try to submit him. The route to victory for Hill, stand and trade, punch and kick, and chip away at Abreu till he either falls apart or you win a decision. Those are the routes to victory. Who's gonna do it? Who's gonna be the one to implement their game plan and get the win? I think it's gonna be Jamal Hill. And like I said, a lot of these Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, for some reason, I don't know if it's like, I don't know what it is, but I'd like to see some guys that are Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champions train with some Olympic level wrestlers and get fantastic at wrestling, and then just take guys down and submit them at will. Jacare doesn't really take guys down. He just stands and trades and boxes with guys. Gilbert Burns, Klidson Abreu, the only guy that doesn't really do it is Damian Maia, but and he doesn't even have that great of wrestling either. It's okay. It's better than most of these Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu guys, but either way, it's interesting, and I'd like to see a guy who's a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu world champion start getting fantastic and doing nothing but training wrestling until they can just take guys down and submit them at will. That's what I'd like to see, and I don't think that Abreu is going to do that. I don't. I think he's going to try to stand with him a little bit, and Hill's going to pick him apart. It's very possible he can knock him out with a quick head kick. He's got some super quick kicks with his left leg. So who am I picking? I'm picking Jamal Hill. And it's a pick'em, which is interesting. I would think that Hill would have some kind of height behind him, which does affect the odds quite a bit in a lot of fights. But obviously not in this one, I guess. So I like 1.8 for Hill. I don't mind that. I really don't mind that at all. It might be tough to put Abreu away. So I don't know if I'm taking the 4.33. I don't know if I want to go that far. And even the 2.87, I don't. That's risky considering I'm getting 1.8 on the money line. So I probably just I go with 1.8 on the money line for Jamal Hill. To go to a decision. Yeah, I probably avoid that, to be honest with you. Over under rounds, unless you find a quick finish, which I'm having a hard time. The only person, I shouldn't say the only, because I guess if Abreu does what I'm telling him to do, he could definitely take him down and submit him. And I think Hill could potentially knock him out. So I avoid those. I avoid go to the distance, just because there's too much variance there. There's not enough tape, and there's not enough on these guys to show me that there's going to be some sort of finish. So I think I probably avoid that completely on the fighters to go the distance, the over under odds. I probably just go with Jamal Hill 1.8 on my money. If I'm sprinkling, if I'm hedging on Abreu, I mean 3.5 for a decision. I don't know. I probably just hedge with the money line if I'm going to, but I actually don't think I'll hedge. I'll probably just take Jamal Hill. I'm not going to take him in every parlay I make and follow my bet slips to see exactly what I do, but I'm probably going to go with Jamal Hill. That's who I'm picking to win, and 1.8 on the money line is probably the only bet I make on this fight. This one is a late replacement, so there's not a lot going on, and I apologize for the graphics from the UFC website. They're always pretty bad. This one's god awful. It is what it is. Yeah. So the only betting line that came out for this was the money line, and obviously Daniel Rodriguez is a massive favorite. I'll start with Gabriel Green is who he's fighting. You obviously couldn't tell. It's Daniel Rodriguez versus Gabriel Green, who is a late replacement for Kevin Holland dropping out, which would have been a super fun fight. This would have been really awesome, Kevin Holland versus Daniel Rodriguez. But either way, we'll go to Gabriel Green. I'm not going to make a case that he wins this fight. He carries his hands super low. He lets himself get into some really bad positions in grappling and on the mat. It's hard to tell if he's a southpaw or a orthodox. He switches his stances and stands kind of almost straight. Yeah, looks quite hittable. He hasn't fought in almost 2 years since his last fight. He won the CXF lightweight title, which is another thing. He's a lightweight fighter, a 155er, but obviously taking this on short notice. I don't want to say too much about the layoff, the almost 2 year layoff, because he did fight 3 or 4 times a year since he kind of started as an amateur in 2014. So he's been super active, Gabriel Green, but he and then maybe he just needed some time off, like there's nothing wrong with that, especially when you get to the point where you're like almost there, which he was and is. Now he's in the UFC. And he's got a win against Edmund Shabazian's older brother, Leon. Took a loss from Jalen Turner, who's a UFC fighter as well. So, I mean, he's definitely got some credentials, and there's not. I think he might struggle at this level. we'll see who he fights next, and hopefully it's at lightweight where he doesn't have to, have a late replacement, move up a weight class, be kind of undersized, whatever it is, and underprepared and all that kind of stuff. So hopefully in his next fight he gets a full camp at 155 and a decent opponent. And Daniel Rodriguez is a good opponent. There's nothing wrong with him at all. So I don't really give Gabriel Green much of a chance at all. I'm not even looking at 4-1 on my money, not taking it whatsoever. Daniel Rodriguez looks really good. He guillotine choked Tim Means, which is a very good win. That's a good win in your debut to fight a guy like that, an old vet like that. He looks really good, man. He's got decent jiu-jitsu, heavy hands, pretty good boxing with a really, really tasty snapping jab with the right hand, which he's a southpaw, which I really like. For some reason, I always like, in all sports, I like lefties for some weird reason, except for lefty quarterbacks. But either way, he's got a really good snapping jab, really good leg kicks, good finish. He's a bit of a finisher. And he puts together his punches well, good submissions, everything. I mean, 1.25 on my money. Yeah, I probably might take it. Like, I'll probably put it in somewhere, check my bet slips. You might as well. I mean, I'm really confident that he gets this win, but I mean, that money's not great, and you never know. I mean, I guess you could get caught and get knocked out. He's never been knocked out, Daniel Rodriguez, and I don't expect him to be honest with you. So yeah, I'm picking Daniel Rodriguez, and if I do bet, which I'll probably sprinkle it somewhere, I'm obviously taking the money line because it's the only bet out there. But there you go. Let's move on. We've got the main event of the prelims, which is interesting. Caitlin Chookagian goes from headlining the show to the prelims, but it is what it is. Valentina Shevchenko's older sister, La Pantera Antonina Shevchenko, versus Caitlin, the blonde fighter Chookagian, the most original nickname in fighting, I guess. So we'll start with Chookagian. Big, long, shouldn't say big, she's long, rangy fighter. These two are very similar. I expect them to be, they're almost a carbon copy of each other. Chookagian throws tons and tons of kicks, which could get her into trouble against some good wrestlers, but that's not what Shevchenko is. So she throws tons of kicks. She does have 5 armbar wins on her resume. 4 of them were as an amateur, which is, I mean, amateur. Yeah, I mean it is what it is. And then 1 as a pro. She's most certainly a stand-up fighter. She's most certainly a kickboxer. Muay Thai, that kind of thing, which makes them very, very similar. Last fight against Valentina is just another on a much higher level than pretty much anyone at 125. I don't really see her losing like ever at 125 at that weight class. If she moves up to 135, which she has, she's not going to beat Amanda Nunes. She's lost to her twice. But either way, we'll talk about Valentina some other time. But takes the loss against Valentina, which was pretty vicious. And there was a kind of a funny moment at the end of the first round when Valentina landed a big elbow on Caitlin. And she came out for the second and blood was dripping down her face. And she kind of realized, like, yep, my face isn't going to look the same after this. Like, that's not fun when you take an elbow like that and you just come to that realization. And this isn't a woman thing, it's man or woman. When you come to that realization that your face is going to be different now, it's not fun. Like, that's not a fun feeling. And you could see it on her face. She was just like, not happy. Either way, so she's going to look to get that back. Not only the loss, but obviously that scar on her head. So Shevchenko is a little more Muay Thai than Valentina, in my opinion. She likes to get in the clinch a little more and throw those Muay Thai knees. Not only to like the head Anderson Silva style, but to the body. She gets in there, clinch, and then throws those inside body knees. The fight against Pudilovo is a very good fight, very fun fight. If you want to see a good one, go watch that. Roxanne Modafferi obviously just wrestled her, just took her down, wrestled her, and grinded out a split win. It was an okay fight, I guess. And then in her Contender Series fight, she kneed horribly. Jamie Nivera, it was pretty. She was just overmatched. Like Valentina was I think she was like a minus 1100 favorite to win that fight, and it went that way. So she didn't particularly belong in there with her, in my opinion. But either way, Roxanne Modafferi is her only loss. A lot less experienced than Valentina. I'm not sure how or why, whatever it is, but she's a lot less experienced than Valentina. This should be an interesting fight. I'll start with this. I definitely give Caitlin a better shot to beat Antonina than I gave her to beat Valentina. I literally gave her zero chance to beat Valentina Shevchenko. I give her a much better chance against Antonina here. Am I gonna pick her to win? Oof, I don't know. This is a tough fight. I'm not sure she should be the dog. I'm not sure that she should be the dog in this fight, which leads me to think I should bet on her, but I'm not going to quite go there. I probably avoid this fight if I'm being honest with you completely. The money line numbers, I'm not touching. I'm not looking at the money line numbers. If I do sprinkle this in somewhere, I'm not looking at the money line numbers, and I'm not looking at the finish numbers. I almost would be willing to bet my house that this goes through decision, but I'm not taking 1.18. I'm not taking those odds. I'm not looking at the over-under rounds because there's no value there whatsoever. The only thing that I'm looking at in this fight is the decision win. 2.5 for Caitlin and 2.05 for Antonina. It's just a matter of if you can get it right. I think it's pretty much a coin flip, and it is pretty close there. I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I probably avoid this as far as betting is concerned because it's just the like margin for victory and margin for error is so slim in this that it's not worth betting. It's not worth betting at all. But if I did, and if you're looking for some advice on it, I mean, I'm gonna pick Antonina. I'm gonna pick Antonina just because they have prepared for Caitlin Chookagian like not that long ago in August, or sorry, in Valentina's last fight. They were preparing for Caitlin in February of this year. So I'm going to take Antonina because like I said, they've been preparing for her pretty much, Valentina, I'm sure Antonina was being used and helping Valentina prepare for Caitlin. And then now she's fighting her. Like, that's who I would take. But I'm not going to bet on it. I'm really not. I'm going to avoid this completely. The margin for victory is the slimmest. Oh, it's razor thin. This could extremely easily be a split for sure. I most certainly see this probably being a split decision. It can't really be a draw unless someone loses a point somewhere. That's the only way. If someone loses a point, which is relatively rare in women's, it's just relatively rare unless there's a lot of eye pokes or something. But we'll see. If someone loses a point, I could potentially see this being a draw. But I see it being a split decision win, and I'm going with Antonina Shevchenko. All right, next up, we've got Mackenzie Dern versus Hannah Shockwave Cifers at 115, the women's strawweight division. We'll start it off with Hannah Cifers. She is definitely more of a stand-up boxer type of a fighter, Muay Thai, tons of kicks, but she has terrible boxing and boxing defense. She's pure stand-up, mostly throws just tons of leg kicks and these looping kind of punches. Very sloppy, really sloppy. Like, no defense, at least not good defense in the boxing. Last time out against Angela Hill, just got picked apart, elbowed, and took the loss pretty handily. And then 1-2 straight before that, and lost to Macy Barber in her debut, which is like, Macy Barber's not losing to girls like Hannah Cifers. She's just not. and probably wouldn't have lost to Roxanne Modafferi had she not torn her ACL. Either way, that's Hannah Cifers, man. There's not a lot there. Kind of funny. I did watch a lot of her fights. Kind of funny. She fought a girl who had a bigger cup on than most dudes, which was really weird. Really weird. I've never seen a women's fight that had one of them was wearing a cup. Never seen it, and it was strange. But either way, she knocked that girl in the second round. It was pretty weird. And she's quite a bit smaller. Not as far as reach is concerned, I guess, and she won't that reach advantage for Mackenzie won't be really anything. She's not very long like that. She's just their body types are fairly similar. If anything, Hannah Cifers' body is a lot longer. But Mackenzie Dern, this is another one where it's like you are one of the best on the floor as far as women's fighters that there is probably in the world. She is, I believe she's a world champion for BJJ. If not, she's just fantastic. She's a black belt. She's extremely good on the ground. This is another one where it's like, why don't you just become a wrestler? Just work on your wrestling, do nothing but work on your wrestling. What has she done? Worked on her boxing and tried to become a boxer and all this stuff because she doesn't mind being taken down. It's just, again, it's that mindset that I don't really agree with. If I were a BJJ black belt, I would work on my wrestling day and night until I was able to just take people down and submit them at will. It might not be exciting, like it might not be the most exciting. People love knockouts, but man, if you're taking people down and tapping them out with arm bars and chokes and stuff, you're a finisher. Not only are you going to win more money, win more fights, people like finishes, you know, regardless of if it's a knockout or a tap out, people like finishers. So anyways, I would like to see Mackenzie Dern work on her wrestling and start taking girls down and tapping them out like she can. Last time out, Amanda Hebos, who is very good. I really like Amanda Hebos a lot. She's a black belt on the ground as well. So that's a scenario where I don't really mind if they try to slug it out to see who's better on the feet because they kind of cancel each other out on the floor. That's the one scenario that I'm kind of okay with just straight boxing. ABC Amanda Bobby Cooper, she dropped her with a punch, which was very good, and then choked her out. Perfect. That's exactly what you want to do if you're Mackenzie Dern. But I was surprised that she was able to drop her. I was surprised. And her boxing is improving for sure. Amanda Hebos actually has really good boxing. She's at the point where she's okay with the wrestling, jiu-jitsu, boxing thing because she does have good boxing. Mackenzie Dern, it's improving. It's definitely improving. It's like her UFC debut against Ashley Yoder, she chose to kind of just box with her and see what she could do on the feet and barely eked out a split decision win. Which she could have just taken her down and choked her out or something. She could have won that fight almost at any point if she started taking her down and wrestling her or, get her to the floor. But she decided to, and in all her fights, she's kind of decided to stand and trade. Do I think she can do that against Hannah Cifers? Probably. Like, in all honesty, Hannah Cifers is not that good of a fighter. And I think Mackenzie Dern, if she's improved, which I'm sure she has on her hands and on her feet since the Hebos fight, I think that she can get the better of her in a stand-up war. If it goes to the mat, she's going to tap her out. No problem. It'll be a win for Mackenzie Dern. It's just a matter of if she wants to take it there. So if we're looking at the odds, who am I picking? I'm picking Mackenzie Dern. There's too many routes to victory for her over Hannah Cifers. I just do not see Hannah Cifers getting this win. I do not. How does she win? I mean, I'm not the money line. I probably avoid 1.125. I probably avoid that. The submission, that's where it's like 1.66. You think she's just gonna either knock her out or tap her out just super quick? I don't know about that. 1.66, I'm not touching. I'd rather go with 1.25. But either way, 4-1 on your money for a decision. Ain't nothing wrong with that. She does have three of her 7 wins are in a decision for Mackenzie Dern. You're getting 4-1, pretty good money for a strawweight fight. Not a lot of knockouts. Can she take her down, submit her? Absolutely. Will she? I don't know. I doubt it. I kind of doubt it. Yeah, I kind of doubt it. So I might sprinkle that somewhere. If I have like 3 runners or something, or if I get behind or something like that, I might sprinkle the 4-1 on my money. To go to the distance, 2.75. I like that. Even over 1.5, unless like Dern just goes in there, takes it down, taps her out. I don't think so. So 1.61 for over 1.5 rounds in a strawweight fight. I like that a lot. That might be your safest bet on this in this fight. Pretty much for sure. That's a fairly safe bet right there. I probably avoid the rest. If I'm going over 2.5, I'm just taking yes to go to the distance for 0.5 more. Unless you can find a super quick finish for Mackenzie Dern, which I don't, not a super quick one anyways. I think she tries to stand with her and box with her until it gets to the point where either it doesn't go her way, or I don't know, then she just takes her down. But I'm picking Mackenzie Dern to win this fight pretty much for sure. I don't even hedge for Hannah Cifers. I don't bet a lot on this fight. Check my bet slips, but if I do, I'm probably just taking this once in a small parlay in the 4-1 on the decision for Mackenzie Dern. If I'm throwing together like a 5 or 6 runner parlay, I'll probably sprinkle in that 1.61 for the over. In a strawweight women's fight, that's a very good value right there. Just look at the even at the 125, Shevchenko and Chookagian, 1.11, I think. 0.5 less for the over 1.5. Like, I'll take these odds. I'll take that 1.61, and I might sprinkle a 4-1 on my money for a decision for Mackenzie Dern, and that's absolutely who I'm picking is Mackenzie Dern. Let's move on. Next up, we've got a lightweight scrap at 155. Brock Weaver versus Roosevelt Roberts, the Predator. We'll start it off with Roosevelt Roberts. This will be his fifth trip to the octagon. Former Contender Series winner. 3-1 in the UFC, 4-1 if you include his Contender Series win. Last time out against Alexander Yakovlev. Good fight, bigger guy, much like Brock Weaver, who is a former welterweight 170-pounder. So he definitely has experience with that. And Vince Pichel is his one loss in his career and in the UFC. Very big guy as well, big, strong dude. Thomas Gifford and then Daryl Horcher in his debut. He finished everyone up until the up until the Gifford fight. He finished Horcher as well. And then 3 straight decisions with 2 wins. So I think he might be itching to get a stoppage here. That might be tough to do against Weaver, but either way, who is Roosevelt Roberts? He's got quick hands with a snapping jab. Good kicks, well-rounded. He's for his size, considering his lanky, long size, he's got some good heavy top game, which is kind of surprising. His strength might kind of be deceiving, is kind of what I'm getting at there. He's got a really good guillotine, really, really good guillotine choke. He had 2 as an amateur and 3 as a professional guillotine chokes. That's kind of what he looks for. As soon as anyone kind of shoots on him, he gets that arm in there and looks to get a quick win that way. When it does get to the mat, he stays very busy, looking for submission attempts and sweeps, scrambles, that kind of thing. So he's a very, very talented fighter, and a very much an up and comer. That's for sure. As you can tell by the betting odds. But that's what you're going to look for out of Roosevelt Roberts. With Brock Weaver, to be honest, he's sloppy everywhere. Very sloppy. He really needs to clean up his boxing, clean up his wrestling. His jiu-jitsu is okay. He's got a good guillotine as well, but he just needs to clean everything up. He's going to look to, in my opinion, kind of clinch and grab and grapple with Roosevelt and put him against a cage and just turn it into a grindy sort of a brawl. That's his route to victory, in my opinion. His last time out in his UFC debut, he was a Contender Series guy and got the win, unanimous decision win. Which was fine, I guess. He Yeah, a couple armbar wins, and then in his first time out in his UFC debut, he took a gross illegal knee to the face from Rodrigo Vargas. It was very illegal. He won via disqualification, which was completely justified. He wasn't really happy with it. Obviously, he wanted to win, get the W properly, but you can't let the fight continue when you take a knee to the face like that. I mean, good job by the ref, and that was 100% the right call. 15-4 is what his record looks like. The reaches are the same, but I give a bit of an edge to Roosevelt because of his length and his lankiness, a little bit of different body types. But Brock Weaver might be the stronger guy because he's fought at 70 and most recently. But like I said, Roosevelt has kind of he's deceptively strong, surprisingly strong considering. So again, how do I see this fight going down? I see Brock Weaver looking to get his hands on Roosevelt. If it stays just kind of as a stand-up on the outside, Roosevelt's going to pick him apart. It's just a matter of time. And I think that's probably initially how it goes until Brock gets kind of pieced up a little bit, and then he's going to look to grapple. So he'll grab him, try to put him against the fence. If he's lackadaisical in any way, he's going to get that guillotine's going to get in there. So either way, Roosevelt can use that to escape or use it to, finish the fight. Who do I think wins this fight? I got Roosevelt Roberts winning this. I think he definitely has more ways to win, and he's just way cleaner on the feet, way cleaner in his boxing and his kicks and everything. So I can see him piecing him apart, picking him apart, piecing him up on the feet. If it goes to the mat, I like Roosevelt Roberts there too. He's way more slick, can create scrambles better, sink in that guillotine if he's lazy in any way. That's the thing. If there's any sort of laziness or anything like that from Brock Weaver, Roosevelt can close the show pretty quickly. He can sink in a submission quick, and if it stays on the feet, he pieces him up. So I like Roosevelt Roberts to win this fight. As far as the betting is concerned, the total rounds over 1.5, 1.3. If you got a ton of runners, you could throw that in there for to juice it up a little bit. To go the distance, 1.66. I'd probably avoid to go the distance altogether because I mean Roosevelt could close the show and tap him out. I don't see Brock Weaver finishing Roosevelt Roberts anywhere. I really just don't see it. If you're a big believer in Brock Weaver and you think he can get it done, 6-1 on your money for a decision win. Good money. It's good odds there if you can find that. I can't find a Brock Weaver win pretty much anywhere. Having a hard time with it. So 1.28 on the money line. Not lovely. This might be one I avoid. Again, I'd probably rather take the over 1.5, or would I? Either way, it's not something I'm going to touch too much. I might avoid this completely just because you're not getting any odds. You're not getting any value. There's no value here whatsoever, pretty much anywhere. If you got, 8 runners or something crazy in a parlay, the money line for Roosevelt Roberts just juices it up a little bit. Yep, nothing wrong with that, I guess. But I probably avoid this for the most part. I'm definitely picking Roosevelt Roberts. I guess I'll just take the money line if I have a crazy parlay that I'm looking to juice up a little bit. But either way, that's who I'm picking. There's not a lot of value, so let's move on to another fight. All right, next up, we got a fight that was moved up pretty considerably in the card with the dropping of Kevin Holland. I think this was definitely the fight to move up in the card. Maybe this or the Smolka Kenney fight, but this is definitely a good one, and I'm excited to see it, and one that I think we can maybe make some money on. We'll start with Billy Quarantillo. We'll start with him. In this fight, I'm not sure what weight it's taking place at. I'm not sure if it's 145, 155. From what I can see, it's a catch weight 150. I'm really not sure. Either way, I don't think it's going to change it a ton. We'll see when they weigh in. It's not going to change it a ton. Their body types are still very different. Carlyle's a little shorter, stockier type of guy, more muscular. Billy Q, taller, leaner, longer, that kind of a thing. It doesn't change their body type, so the weight isn't going to be a massive difference here. So we'll start with Billy Q, or Channing Wahlberg, as Uriah Faber will call him. He's I mean, it depends on who he's fighting. It really does. So in earlier on in some other fights, he's very easily gives up positions on the mat. Very easily against good wrestlers. He gives up bad positions. He settles for bad positions, which is not a good plan, obviously. But then against Jacob Kilburn, he looked fantastic and just dominated on the ground. But is that he's a better grappler than I thought, or is Jacob Kilburn just that bad? Either one could be possible. It's hard to really tell. I'm going to probably go with my opinion that he's not a fantastic grappler, and Kilburn is just not very good. He got absolutely dominated by Saul Rogers on The Ultimate Fighter. Yes, that was 5 years ago, so I'm not going to sit here and say he's just a terrible grappler and that's just what it is. But he definitely got dominated and let himself get put into bad positions, and a few other fights that I watched as well. So he's the interesting thing. He always every fight I watched, he wants to be. He has to be, which is interesting. So keep that in mind. So he's always swinging first. He's the first person to throw anything. Every fight I watched, which is interesting. So again, is he a better grappler? Or is Kilburn just that bad? We'll see. We'll see how this fight goes. I'm not sure if this fight goes to the mat or not. But big, long, rangy guy. The reach, it says Carlyle's got a 1-inch advantage, which, in the arms, but with the length of Billy Q, it's going to be pretty much even. It'll be almost a wash either way. I'm not really concerned with reach for either guy, even if it was a 1-inch for Carlyle or 1-inch for Billy. It's fine. I'm not worried about a reach advantage in any way. Pop over. So I'll go through kind of his last few fights. He's a 6-fight win streak for Billy Q and 5 straight finishes. So he's definitely a finisher. Likes to get done quick. He's got good jiu-jitsu, like I said, which is he might just be one of those guys. He's okay with fighting off his back, which isn't. I don't love that mentality. I just don't love it. It's not conducive for winning a lot of fights at this level. It's just not. Maybe in the regional circuit and the lesser cards and stuff like that, you can get by with your skill off your back and you can tap a lot of guys out off your back kind of a thing. But at this level, it's a lot harder to just go out there and do that against this quality of fighter. So he's another one of those guys. So let's bump over to Spike Carlyle. He's southpaw, but he switches really well and really quite often switches his stance. He's going to be a little shorter, stockier, more muscular for sure. He's a black belt in judo and he's got a brown belt in BJJ. So I think Billy will have an advantage in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but not an extreme one for sure. And I would say that Carlyle is the better kind of grappler / wrestler type of a thing. He's got kind of a karate style stand up where he's bouncing on his toes constantly. He'll probably have some pink ankle guards, I would imagine. And that's Spike Carlyle. He's had experience fighting guys that are longer and taller and longer. And his last fight against Elon Cruz, who is much taller and much longer, he knocked him out in the first round. It was fantastic. He's had 3 straight first round knockouts. 2 of those, I couldn't find any footage on his LXF fight, first round knockout against Jean-Paul Lisboniani. I can't say his name, but against Matthew Calhoun, he spinning back fist knocked him out in the first round, and he's again taller, longer, just like Billy Q. He 9-1 on his record right now. Billy Q is 12-13, so those are their records. Obviously, UFC doesn't really keep track of it on their website for some reason. So let's get to who I'm picking. We'll go with the betting money first. Let's do the bet line first. Close to a pick'em. I think it's moved a little bit, but either way, it's close to a pick'em. The interesting thing about this line, the really interesting thing about this is you've got on the money line, Billy Q as the favorite. But then for a finish, we've got Spike Carlyle for a favorite, which is weird. That's really strange. And then for a decision, Billy Q's an extreme favorite to win in a decision. So a weird line. They clearly know and think that Carlyle has more power, and can kind of close the show easier, is what the line makers are saying. Fight to go the distance. I mean, that's 2.5. That's a little surprising, but they clearly think there's going to be a finish here. But then it's like a late round. It's like a late finish that they're thinking. Like, yeah, weird. It's a weird line. This is a weird, really strange line. It's a really strange line, which we'll see. But I think this is another one that we can make some money. I'm liking Spike Carlyle. I like him to win this fight. I like Spike Carlyle to win this fight. I do. I think he's got a lot of momentum. When you're finishing fights that quick and like that, you get a lot of momentum behind you. So, and just the way that I think Billy kind of gives up positions, I think if it does go to the mat, I think Carlyle can just kind of hold him down and eke out a decision if he has to. But I think this is going to be a fireworks fight for sure. And I'm picking Spike Carlyle. So as far as betting is concerned, I'm probably just going to take Spike Carlyle 2.1 on the money line. That's probably all I'm going to take, because I think it's too risky. I don't know. There's not a ton of tape on these guys, especially against quality opponents. There's not a ton of tape out there that you can find. So I'm not going to just, 2.62 and 3-1 on your money for a finish. Yeah, that's good. That's okay. If I can find a KO or decision for Spike Carlyle and it's about 3-1, I'll take that. But what I'm looking at here, I'm taking 2.1 on my money for Spike Carlyle, throw it in a parlay with 3 runners, something like that, and I like that value. Over 1.5, 1.57, I don't mind that. I don't mind that. You could go under 2.5 if you really want to see a finish and you really want to bet that, but that's always a tough bet, especially against like guys like this. This is a big fight. This is a really big fight for both of them, and they both need to win. So I'm just banking on Carlyle gets it done. That's who I'm picking, and I'll be taking the 2.1. Check my bet slips to see if I go anywhere else, but either way, I'm picking the Alpha Ginger in this one. All right, we got the co-main event of the evening. I apologize if it seems a little forced or anything like that. This is the third time I've had to record this, so I'm a little annoyed, but that's how she goes. So we got Blagoy Ivanov versus Augusto Sakai. Let's start with Blagoy Ivanov. Stocky guy, short, stocky guy. A lot of shades of DC in his stature. Obviously a little less athletic and less skilled than Daniel Cormier for sure, but similar stature-wise. 18-3 is his record. Last time out against Derek Lewis, I actually am pretty sure I had that scored for Ivanov. So he could easily be sitting at 19-2, which is an extremely good record. Only losses coming against Junior Dos Santos in his UFC debut, which was a 5-round main event. I don't think Ivanov should be in too many 5-round fights, but either way, that's what it was there. And then lost to Alexander Volkov back in his Bellator days in 2014. So very good records. Got wins over Rico Rodriguez, LeVar Johnson, Sean Jordan, Josh Copeland, Tai Tuivasa, Ben Rothwell, guys like that. Solid, skilled, grizzled vet. Was stabbed in the friggin' heart, so he's clearly pretty tough. You can see his scar on his chest there. Almost died. Like, this guy is tough, and he's a fighter. World Combat Sambo champion. Good judo, grappling, and submission. Obviously, that's what Sambo's all about. In his last time out against Derek Lewis, he took some big-time shots. If he's not getting knocked out by guys like Derek Lewis and Junior Dos Santos and even Josh Copeland and LeVar, if he's not getting knocked out by these guys, then pretty tough to say that Augusto Sakai just goes in there, cracks him in the head, knocks him out, but it's possible. He's got this really quick, he's a southpaw, obviously, so he's got this really quick lead, he's got this really quick lead right hook that he likes to pop out there. It worked really well against Tai Tuivasa, and that might play a big role in this fight against Sakai. So we'll see. Move over to Augusto Sakai. Sitting at 14-1, 11 of his 14 wins coming by way of knockout. Last time out against Marcin Tybura, knocked him out pretty quickly in the first round. Got a split decision win against Andrei Arlovski that I actually think he lost. I had Arlovski winning that. You could make a case he won that 30-27, if not 29-28. So he eked out a split decision win somehow. Fight before that, he beat Chase Sherman, knocked him out in the third round, and then knocked a guy out in the second round of his Contender Series fight. Only loss came to Czech Congo, which is fine. I didn't watch the fight because I heard it was one of the worst and most boring fights ever, so I didn't want to put myself through that. Split decision loss to Czech Congo back in Bellator. He's got good Muay Thai and boxing, orthodox fighter, a lot of kicks, calf kicks and stuff like that. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu brown belt, so they should be, I still think Blagoy is the better kind of grappler and potentially better submission artist. He throws good for a big guy that cuts down to 265. He moves pretty well. He's got pretty good movement, and he's got good combos, and he finishes a lot of combos with kicks, which is pretty rare, especially it's pretty rare at heavyweight. It's pretty rare that a guy can put together combos like that, especially for a guy his size that cuts down to this weight. But he's bigger, longer, has good reach. He should have maybe pushing about 5-6 inches of reach with that length and height. And if he can just pound away at Blagoy with kicks, then that's going to pay dividends. But so how does this fight kind of play out? How I have it kind of playing out for each guy. Let's start with, what does Augusto Sakai have to do? What I think he's got to do, stay away from him, pick him apart with the jab and kicks, be long, pick him apart, stay on the outside, move, use your footwork, which is tough because long term, like at the end of the day, these are big boys and they're going to get tuckered out. And, he's going to be able to close the distance and get a hold of them. So, but that's what Sakai's got to do, pick him apart on the outside. I have a hard time thinking he's just going to crack Blagoy's big head and knock him out. I have a hard time thinking that, I do. But he could pick him apart and stay on the outside and get that win. That's very possible. For Blagoy, get in there, get in tight, get those underhooks, work some judo throws, that kind of a thing. Maybe get on the mat with a submission, pound him out, some ground and pound, stuff like that. As far as Blagoy Ivanov's 18 wins, he's got 6 by KO, 6 by submission, and 6 by decision. So it's really hard to see how he's going to try to go about this fight, right? So who's going to be able to implement their game plan a little better? That's always the question when it's a fight like this. In my opinion, and who I'm picking, is Blagoy Ivanov. Because, and maybe I end up being where, I pick him to lose, he wins, and where I pick him to win, he loses. And he loses this fight. That's happened before. I picked him to lose probably his last 2 fights, and he won them both on me. But I just think it's a matter of time before he can get in there and get his hands on him, underhooks and take him for a ride, dump him on his head type of thing. It's only a matter of time. It might not happen in the first round, but in the second, third, Sakai's going to start to get tired. They're both going to start to get tired, but, and then I think Blagoy can get in there, get the underhooks, and grind it out. I think it's a good possibility this goes to a decision, which the oddmakers do as well, considering it's a heavyweight fight. 2.1 for not to go. That's good for a heavyweight fight. But I think that there's a very good, very, very good possibility this goes to a decision. And I think it's a decent possibility that Ivanov is the one that comes out on top. Again, it's a complete coin flip as far as money line, submission, finish, and decision. Over 1.5. Yeah, again, it's another one of those ones where if you got a bunch of runners and you just want to juice it up a bit, 1.3 to juice up your parlay. Yep, nothing wrong with that. If you really see a finish, then yeah, bet the unders. Or bet the unders. I'd probably go if you really see a quick finish somehow. If you can find a quick finish, like I can't, but if you can find a quick finish, the 3.4 is better than taking a coin flip on each guy. You might as well take the 3.4 under 1.5. I'm not betting that, but either way. So what do I bet? I honestly probably avoid this if I in a lot of my parlays. If anything, I might sprinkle the 1.5 for the over, the 1.3 for the over 1.5 rounds. And I mean, I might take one of them. It depends on where I'm at as far as my betting slips go as well. Check my bet slips to see where I'm at and if I've touched anything. But if I'm behind, I might sprinkle the decision for probably Ivanov, but I might take Sakai. Depends. It's weird. It might just depend on how the fights are going before this, you know? So check my bet slips, I guess, but my pick is Ivanov to win. Over 1.5 rounds, probably sprinkle that somewhere. You could just take the money line for either one. I mean, this is a pure coin flip. I really do see this as a coin flip fight. A lot of people have Ivanov winning this like consistently, right? My initial thought was Sakai. If I'm being honest, my initial thought was Sakai, but when I dove into their fights and did a little more research and everything and watched a ton of their fights, I kind of moved it to Ivanov just because I think he can get his hands on him eventually. It's just a matter of time. It was a lot like the Tai Tuivasa. You know, I see this going similar to the Tai Tuivasa fight where he eventually just gets his hands on him or hits him with that inside right hook, you know, clips him a few times and grinds him out. That's just kind of how I see it going. But so there you go. There's my pick. There's my betting tips on this one. Take it or leave it. Avoid it if you'd like. I'll probably avoid it for the most part. Check my bet slips if you need some advice. And let's move on to the main event. All right. We got the main event. Main event time. Woodley versus Burns. The chosen one versus Dorino. This is an interesting one. This is a really interesting fight. We're going to start it out with Gilbert Burns. First, we'll take a look at the measurables here. So Gilbert Burns used to fight at lightweight, as pretty much everybody knows. Bumped up to welterweight 3 fights ago. So this is his 4th fight at welterweight. Already ranked 6th, which is pretty impressive. I mean, he's had good wins at welterweight, that's for sure. Very, very, very quality wins at welterweight. So it's pretty deserved. Little taller but shorter arms kind of a thing. That reach could play a role, depends on how Woodley fights. So we'll get into that, but let's start it out with Gilbert Burns. Orthodox fighter. He gives and takes quite a few leg kicks. He's got some he doesn't have like clean boxing. He's got big, wild kind of punches. He throws a lot into a lot of his punches. He's throwing haymakers out there quite a bit. I'd really like for him to clean up his boxing and his defense especially when throwing kicks. Gas tank isn't amazing, but he's fought almost all of his fights on short notice. He just, if you follow him on Twitter or see what his action on Twitter, he's taken fights on days notice or trying to. He's trying to get fights on days notice. It's crazy. So it's hard to say if his gas tank is actually bad. I'd like to see him in like a full camp. I don't even think this was a full camp, like a full, you know. Yeah, the Gunnar Nelson fight was 2 weeks. Shevchenko was 2 weeks. So if he had like a 4-6 week camp, I don't know. It's hard to really say. Again, he throws those leg kicks, and he only needs like 1 or 2 to cause some serious damage on somebody. Against Gunnar Nelson and against Shevchenko, 1 or 2 leg kicks, and they were not feeling very good. They were hurting. And he can fight pretty defensively. He can fight defensively well if he gets into trouble. So he does get into trouble. That's the thing. He does get into trouble. He got dropped by Michel Pizarris twice. He got rocked by even Dan Moret had him rocked. which is, you know, like you can't be getting rocked by some of these guys. So he doesn't have the most amazing chin, if I'm being honest. He got knocked out by Dan Hooker, and these are all at 155. So if you have, I mean, and maybe that's from cutting weight. Maybe that's from cutting weight. It does drain you for sure. But if you get knocked out and dropped by guys like that, Tyron Woodley, we'll get into that. He does have better wrestling and takedowns than a guy like Damian Maia, who went 0 for 22 against Tyron Woodley when they fought. And again, I said it earlier, I've said it multiple times in this episode, he's one of those guys that he doesn't care about getting taken down. Gilbert Burns does not care. Take me down. Go ahead. I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable on the mat. I'm comfortable on my back. Doesn't matter. So I'd like to see him work some wrestling and be a better wrestler. We'll see if that happens. He's clearly worked on his stand-up. He's worked on his punching power and his knockouts and things like that. He's got 6 knockouts, and they're all recent. You know, early in his career, he was just submitting everybody because he could do it. He's a 3-time world jiu-jitsu champion. 3-time. He's heavily decorated in jiu-jitsu. So we'll see kind of how he fights this fight. Let's move over to Woodley. Actually, we'll continue a little bit. A couple more on Gilbert Burns. His 3 fights at welterweight. Damian Maia knocked him out in the first round in his last time out. Gunnar Nelson, unanimous decision. And Alexei Kunchenko handed him his first ever loss, unanimous decision as well. So like I said, very credentialed, not only just in his UFC career, he's had some very good opponents in his UFC career, but at welterweight especially, which is again why he's moved up the ranking so quickly. So Hard Knocks 365, that's another thing that could play a role. I'm not sure. We'll see. Since he moved up to welterweight, we all know who the champion is. Kamaru Usman, who trains at the same gym, the Hard Knocks 365. It's hard to say, you know, if it's hard to say how much he's helping Gilbert Burns here. Why? Because they could fight soon. If Gilbert Burns gets this win, you could argue he just deserves a title shot right now against Kamaru Usman. So how much is Usman really wanting to be in there helping him out? You would think he's a good teammate and he's doing it and he's helping him out and he's the mold, really. Like that would be your training. That would be the perfect training partner for Tyron Woodley, would be Kamaru Usman. Is he doing it? I'm not sure. I didn't really look into it. Maybe I should have done a quick couple Google searches, but again, it's a guy that he might be fighting soon. So it's hard to say if he's really helping him out. But either way, the team has been preparing for Tyron Woodley, and now they're still preparing for Tyron Woodley with Gilbert Burns. So that could play a role here. That could definitely play a part in this fight. Move on over to Tyron Woodley. Trains at American Top Team, one of the best. So these guys are just both phenomenal gyms, phenomenal camps, well trained. Yeah, and they're both vets. Like there's nothing really, there's no difference there. Big guy, and big time speed and power. Everybody knows that. Big time power, big right hand, fast. But that's also a bit of an issue because he relies on that power a little bit too much. It seems like he just relies on that right hand, and he just thinks he's gonna hit it every time, and he's gonna just knock a guy out every time. But the fact is, like, he hasn't knocked guys out in a long time. That's a fact. Like, I'm not saying he's not a knockout artist. I'm not saying he can't do. I'm not saying anything against Tyron Woodley, but the fact is, his last knockout was 4 years ago against Robbie Lawler, and he just caught him with a big right hand. And then before that, 6 years ago against Dong Hyun Kim. Like, it's not like he's going out there and just knocking guys' heads off anymore. He was at one point in his career, but he's just not really doing that anymore. It's just not I mean, it's a fact. It's just not happening. So his last time out against Kamaru Usman, that's kind of like the blueprint. Tyron Woodley is not comfortable on his back, like a lot of wrestlers, not comfortable off his back. Even in the Stephen Thompson fight, where he went for a guillotine and pulled guard, kind of not guard, but like tried to sink in the submission for the guillotine, and Thompson ended up getting his head out. I mean, it was only for like 45 seconds or something like that, but Tyron looked like a fish out of water, and Stephen Thompson had his hand on his throat, dropping bombs. Of course, he lost that round for sure, Stephen Thompson. I actually had the first fight scored for Thompson. It was basically they gave a 10-8 to Tyron Woodley. That the 10-8 round was the round that Stephen Thompson ended the round with his hand on his throat, punching him in the face. I don't know how you can really give it a 10-8. Yes, he dominated the round and almost finished him, but he didn't. And Thompson ended up on top and was raining down punches to end the round. So I wasn't personally ready to give Tyron Woodley a 10-8 round there, but I see, and that's obviously how they got the draw. Was they gave him a 10-8 and Stephen Thompson won 3 rounds. That's what happened, which is fine. I mean, I'm not ready to die on that hill, that's for sure. But either way, and then the second round I did have scored for Woodley. So or the second fight, sorry, I did have scored for Woodley, and he did get that win. But again, it was a majority, and guys had it scored as a draw. One judge had it scored as a draw. Anyways, and then Kamaru Usman, Darren Till, he dominated Darren Till, who was not ready for that fight. In my opinion, he wasn't ready to be in there with Woodley at that time. Damian Maia, he got the win, but realistically, I was kind of thinking like, man, you should have put away Damian Maia. Like, he had him. The first punch of the fight blew up Maia's eye, and then it didn't really get much worse from there for Damian Maia. So, like, I wasn't screaming impressed with that performance, to be honest with you. Either way, he hasn't been hyperactive since the two Stephen Thompson fights, and has only had 2 fights in 3 years, Darren Till and Kamaru Usman. Yeah, this is an interesting fight. This is a really interesting fight. It's going to depend on what Gilbert Burns' strategy is and what he wants to do. It's a smaller cage, 25 feet instead of 30, which should benefit a grappler. Who's going to be that grappler? Is it going to be Woodley? Is it going to be Burns? Woodley is, from what I can tell, and from all of the fights that I watched, he doesn't make very good in-fight adjustments. He starts slow, and then if things don't go his way, he doesn't adjust very well. I mean, even against like Stephen Thompson and against Kamaru Usman for sure, he didn't make very good adjustments, and he doesn't do it quickly. It's not on the fly. It seems like the message from his corner is always the same. Get those hands going, get moving, go for the takedown. Almost between every round and every fight, it's the same message, but he just doesn't really do it, which is frustrating to me, because he's got all the tools. Obviously, he was a champ for years, and he's got all the tools to be the champ. He is getting a little bit older. He's 38 years old now. You got to figure he's at the end, getting towards the end of his career. You have to figure, maybe not, maybe he fights for 5 more years. What do I know? But you have to kind of figure that. So it just depends. For me, it depends on Gilbert Burns. The outcome of this fight depends on Gilbert Burns more than it depends on Tyron Woodley, because I know for a fact that Gilbert Burns can take him down and submit him. I know for a fact he can do that. He has been knocked out by Nate Marquardt, his first ever loss back in the Strikeforce days. So he has been knocked out. But I don't really see him just getting dropped. I don't. So for Tyron Woodley, this has to be his strategy. Go out there, box him, just, fight it just like he tried to fight Usman, just like he fought Damian Maia, just like he fought Stephen Thompson, just like he fought Robbie, like that kind of thing. If it goes his way, he's going to get the win. If it's going his way and he's having good luck, he's going to get the win. And as far as knockouts are concerned, Tyron Woodley has much is much more likely to knock out Gilbert Burns than Gilbert Burns is to knock out Tyron Woodley, for sure. For Gilbert Burns, it's a complete wild card. Does he go in there and take him down like he should and could get the win? That's the easy route to victory for me. Easy, the easiest route to victory for sure for Gilbert Burns. Has he done that? Not recently. He goes out there and he boxes and he tries to throw hands. And then if he gets into trouble, he looks to take the guy down. He has gotten into trouble lately. He even, like I said, he even got rocked by Dan Moret at 155. Gassed a little bit against Shevchenko. First time at welterweight on 2 weeks' notice. But, you know, do I think Gilbert Burns can get this win? Yeah, I do. You know what? When the odds came out, when this fight was first put together, I had Gilbert Burns winning this fight. I did. I looked at the odds and I was like, boom, I'm taking Gilbert Burns. 2.5. Heck yeah, I'm taking Gilbert Burns. And now I'm sitting here and I'm thinking Tyron Woodley knocks out Gilbert Burns. You know? So I'm back and forth on this one. I'm really back and forth. I'm even right this second, I'm not sure I want to pick a winner and I'm comfortable with who I'm picking. But I'm taking Tyron Woodley. I'm taking Tyron Woodley to win this fight. I am. I just think he catches him. I do. I think he catches him and potentially knocks him out in a 5-round fight. And that's the other thing. Gilbert Burns has never been in a 5-round fight. Not only has he been past a 3rd round, he's never been in a 5-round fight. So that's my biggest kind of like draw to go towards Woodley. He's been in this situation. He's been here. And, you know, he's hungry. He wants to get that title back. He gets this win. He gets a title shot. That's it. You can't deny him. You really can't deny Tyron Woodley. If he gets this win, he gets a title shot again against whoever it is. So that's who I'm picking, man. I'm picking Tyron Woodley. That's who I'm picking. Looking at the odds, it's not extreme value. Like I really wish this was closer, like 2.1 for Burns and 1.72 for Woodley, which I think it got bet to, but then it went the other way again. So it's hard to find a ton of value, like 2.3 for Woodley to catch him. I do like those odds, I do like that possibility, but I don't like those odds. 2.3, that's not enough. If it were 3.75, yeah, for sure, I'd take that. And then 4-1 on a decision. I don't particularly see this going to a decision. I think it's because Gilbert Burns is going to fight balls to the walls on this and be going for, you know, kill or be killed. You know, he's going to look to go out on his sword. Either he gets a knockout or he gets knocked out. That's kind of how I feel like Gilbert Burns is going to approach this fight, to be honest with you. Does he knock him out? Yeah, maybe, but I'm not ready to bet on that either. Fight to go the distance. No, 1.5. I don't love the over-under on rounds. I mean, over 2.5, I like that number. Over 2.5, 1.72. I don't mind that number at all. I mean, I don't mind that number at all. Obviously, that could bite you. If you see a quick finish, which is also possible, again, like if Gilbert Burns goes out there swinging crazy and Tyron Woodley lands a right hand, it's over. Lights out. That's the end of the fight. Under 1.5, 3-1. Yeah. It's tough to find the value in this one. It's tough to find the betting value, you know? It's really tough. So I honestly probably avoid this a fair bit. I probably don't really sprinkle this. Check my bet slips, but I probably don't really touch this very much. I'd like if the line moves and I'm getting better odds for Woodley, I definitely sprinkle on that. If it's 1.72 for Woodley, and the line moves there, it did move there and it moved back. So if it moves there again, I'm jumping on it. But 1.57, I'm having a hard time. I mean, depends on where I'm at, I guess, with bet slips, you know, as the night goes. But either way, I'll leave it at that. I can't give you a ton of betting advice on this one. I really can't. There is some stuff to maybe sprinkle, but I can't see like some screaming value that's just like you have to bet this kind of a thing. You know, there's just really nothing. I'll probably, if anything, the over 2.5. But even then, like, yeah, I don't know. Good luck out there, guys. Good luck out there. But I'm picking Tyron Woodley. So there you go. There's my breakdown. There's the main event there. Woodley over Burns. Thank you so much for watching, guys. As always, hit the like, subscribe, and turn on notifications for me. I hope you enjoyed the UFC on ESPN 9 breakdown and prediction show. Hopefully we make some money tomorrow. Check my bet slips at Cody Woodman on Twitter if you need some betting advice. And as always, if you're afraid to be wrong, you will never be right.